All right. And so if I did my job correctly, that would have been the trailer for Old, from M Night Shyamalan, his latest film. And so what can be said about this? So the thing that I will say is that M Night Shyamalan, all the concepts to his movies are great concepts to me. Even The Happening, which is one of his more shit on and disliked films, is a great concept to think about nature turning on humans, considering like everything that we've done to the environment and everything. It's a great concept. Sometimes it fails. He falls in the execution. Sometimes I think to the need to have twist, and I get it. That's just his writing style. That's what he's been known for. But sometimes I think that just the need to have twist sometimes holds him back a little bit. That's my opinion. It may not be one that everyone agrees with or has as well, and that's fine. M Night Shyamalan to me is a really good director. This film is beautifully shot. Like it's just, and I think it's all. And shout out, spoiler warning, because it's just me. JB's not here, so I'm kind of just gonna free talk about this one. Um, but one of the things that happens towards the end of this movie is that the two characters are just sitting there after everything that's happened to them, and they just say, this beach is beautiful," and you get that from this film. Like this is an amazingly beautifully shot movie. There's sometimes he uses these close-ups specifically with the kid characters that to me are like, and I get it, they was trying to shield their face, but we knew they were good. Like we seen the trailers, we understood what was gonna happen. That got a little bit weird to me. But otherwise, beautifully shot film. I really think the cinematography is great here. But let's just talk about the skeleton, the bones of this script. So it's based around this family is on this resort, and the guy who owns the resort or leads the resort suggests that they go see this private beach that is on the wildlife reserve side. They go there with this other family in the car, and then as they get there, that's when everything starts unwinding. Like there's a rapper on there named Midsize Sedan, another family, a guy and his wife come out there eventually later on, and shit just starts popping off there. That's when we start getting to where it's going. And I think the thing with movies that don't have a villain, like a villain that you can point to, the dialogue, the pacing, everything has to be great in that, because there's really no straight, like, yes, there's a villain and we find out, and I'll talk about who is ultimately the villain of this film, but like during the majority of this movie you don't know what's going on. The beach itself, what it's causing, and they figured out very early on that the rocks there, the minerals there are causing their cells to age faster. They put that together pretty fast early in the movie. They put together why they're probably aging so quick. So it's not like a mystery of them figuring out. Yeah, you don't know for sure until the end, but they pretty much figure that out. So it's not really anything left guessing there. It's really just getting from moment to moment, with this film, of things that creep you out, things that don't make sense, moment to moment of things that happen with these characters and conflict with them. And that's ultimately where I think this film falls at. Is that I don't know if it's that we didn't get enough time with the characters. I don't know if it's that we it could have been written in a way where we better understood where the characters were going. There's a specific character here, an older guy. He's a doctor, and I don't think they ever flat out stated if he's like suffering from dementia or something. But you kind of figure it out early on, right? You kind of figure it out, but because not of everything else going on with people aging and the kids getting older, and there's a scene in this in which you've seen it, the girl gets pregnant. Well, I'll talk about that here in a second. That kind of freaked me the fuck out. But you don't really, he's not even necessarily a villain. Like he does something where he cuts the face of Midsize Sedan, the rapper, the black guy who's in this, and then he's like, well, he was gonna attack me. I don't know why, but I felt like he was gonna attack me. And that kind of, you kind of figure out, okay, this guy maybe is suffering from like Alzheimer's or dementia or something like that, to where he's getting paranoid. But you also kind of think for a second that, okay, maybe he's just paranoid because what the fuck is, they find a dead body early on. That's where everything kicks off. And it was this girl that the rapper Midsize Sedan had linked up with there. And they both knew they were going through something, and he waited for her. He said that she was going to swim. He kind of waited for her to come back to the beach. He gets accused of killing her, by the character who's suffering from dementia. But when all that happens, you're kind of like, all right, did he do it just because of the paranoia of what's going on with the island? And you kind of slowly start figuring out, no, this has accelerated his mental decline that he was probably already going on. That's why they're at this island. And that's one of the things that we end up finding out, right? Is that everybody, a member of each one of these families are suffering from an illness. And it plays into why they're all there, why they were put on this beach. And so as that mystery unfolds, it's really not as interesting, right? Is okay, they're all here, but without us knowing anything, like we I think like if lines of dialogue would have been paid to the fact of maybe the parent company that owns this resort also owns a pharmaceutical company. If there would have been something or a science division or something that it would have played into that mystery. Maybe people don't need the mystery aspect of it. I just think that that's something for me that would have kept me more engaged and kept me more in going on with, like, yes, there are crazy moments. There are moments where they have to pull a tumor out of one of the main ladies. Like, she came with a tumor. She says it was like 3 centimeters long, and then because of like the aging and stuff that happens, it grew to over the size of a softball in a few hours, and they have to cut it out. And like, you heal faster on this island, so they have to stick their fingers in the wound to keep it open. And while that is, it's a great horror situation to be in, right? When you just think about just that scenario that I just gave with the tumor in a horror movie, it would be a great one. But again, because of just the pacing and the way that things played out in this film, it really didn't hit the way that it could have. And that's ultimately what I feel about this movie, is that it's not a bad movie at all. It's a movie that I can honestly say I'll probably go back and watch again. I'd probably pick up this, like if it ever comes on Netflix or a streaming service, and I'm like, I'll probably pop on old. But it's something that it never quite hits the heights that it does. And I know it's based off a graphic novel. I've never read it before, or a novel itself. I'm not sure if it's a graphic novel or just a book, but it's not anything that I've read. So I came into this completely unfamiliar, and I know a lot of these beats do happen in there. I don't know if they happen differently than in the film or not, but ultimately just really feels like we got these moments that are meant to creep us out, but it never quite hit the way that it could have for me. One of those moments, and this is something I alluded to before. So there are a 6-year-old boy, 6-year-old girl that aren't siblings. The 6-year-old boy has an older sister, and they age up to eventually be teenagers. And there's this scene where they're laying in this tent together, just talking, and then they come out, and the girl is pregnant, and you're just left to kind of put it together. Now, there is a line of dialogue, and I'll talk about that in a second, but then the girl's walking out, and like, everybody sees her belly growing, and her mom asks, "What were you guys in there doing?" And she's like, "Oh, we were just playing." And it's like, wait, what? Are they really gonna do this? And then you hear the father kind of in the background says to the son, "What you did are how babies are made." And the kid is like, "What?" And so you got to keep in mind that while they have aged up to like being between teenage years, that they still have the mind of these 6-year-olds. So he's not really understanding what's happening. And then the baby dies within 1 minute of being born. And that was just like, I get it. And I know, and I read that it happened in the book, and that was a plot point in the book, but it just, as a father, that just, like, you got to think about it. Like, yes, I know sex is you start having those physical desires once you reach a certain age, and that's what they went through. But to have the mind still be in the mind of a 6-year-old and to go through this, that definitely creeped me out. And there's some great images. So one of the characters, for example, suffers from a calcium deficiency. And so as she's going through this island, she's aging. She was one of those people who like really are into her looks and the beauty. And so the kids, they go into this cave to kind of get away because their dad's being attacked by the guy with dementia. And as they shine a light to her, she's throwing rocks at them, just like, "Don't shine a light at me." She talks for a while. They shine the light back, and she goes to lift up this rock, and her arm bends and cracks, and the bones break. And then because they heal so fast, they set incorrectly, and then she has like this jacked up arm, and she keeps trying to crawl towards these kids, and her body just gets more progressively fucked up during this. And that was a really solid horror sequence. Now, how it fit into the larger movie is the issue, but there are some really great moments in this film, I think. And ultimately, I just wish that it was executed better. And I don't know. I don't want this. This isn't a horrible movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I think. And then when you get to the climax, right? So there are two things that happen in the climax of this film. One, we they end up figuring out so everyone else dies. And like I said, it's a great moment between the main mother and father characters in this where he's kind of losing his sight. She's lost hearing in one of her ears, and they're just talking. And that's that moment where I said, he's like, this beach is really beautiful. And she's like, there's nowhere else that I'd rather be here but with you. And he kind of dies of old age. She dies moments after him. And it just leaves these two kids that started this movie off being 6 and probably 10, if I had to guess. And so they are, at this point, they're teenagers or young adults, and then they die. Then by the time the next morning comes, because they think they figure out like 50 years happens in 20 hours or something like this, the kids have aged up. They are 50 years old. And him and the kid, it was the nephew of the guy who runs the resort or whatever. They had this code. They became friends, and they had this code they were writing. And he left them a note that he didn't think to decode till afterwards, to after all this shit has happened. And it basically pointed them towards the coral. Go to the coral. I think he said his uncle doesn't like the coral. The coral got them basically to safety. They make you think that they died for a minute. And that felt anticlimactic to me because it's like, had you read that, you could have avoided all of this shit. But the kicker that comes in this, and this is one of the things that I had a problem with in one of the only written movie review I've ever done was for Glass. For Glass, which was an M Night Shyamalan movie, and I highlighted there why it was important to nail the ending. That's where this really lost me up. So the ending, we end up finding out that it's natural that it makes them age because of the rocks. They were correct on that. But the reason why they're sent there is that they test drugs. They test, like, they're able to do years of testing in just a day because of how much this that beach makes them accelerate in age. So this was plotted out by the company that owns it. And one of the things that they pointed out is that there's a couple. There was an Asian man and a black woman. The black woman suffered from seizures. We get actually earlier on in the film, we see her have a seizure. They apparently gave her some medicine, and they end up finding out that trial worked because it would have lasted for 16. She basically went 16 years worth of time because of the accelerated time on the island without a seizure. Now, when it did kick in, it came back with the force and she passed away from it. But they were able to test that and find new drugs and just accelerate it. And it's one of those things where I guess they're trying to present to you, do the ends justify the means? They're trying to get you into that moral dilemma. And I just didn't feel it. Again, because of the writing, because of the pacing, I didn't feel it at all. It was just like one of those things of, really? All this for that? And that's just my opinion on it. That's the feeling that I was left from it. You may have a different one. And then, the kids, like I said, they thought that they died. They end up popping up on the island. They get the police involved. Everything's shut down. It ends with them supposed to be going to stay with their aunt. And he mentions, well, how would you feel if you got a call from a 50-year-old man claiming to be your nephew who was just 6 years old yesterday? And so ultimately, it's one of those things where and I know people have this, either you love it or hate it with M Night Shyamalan. And, I don't think I'm a either hate it or love it person in general. I always try to find things in something. There's usually some good and stuff. There's a lot of good in this movie. Just like scenes by themselves are like really good horror scenes or horror scenarios. But ultimately how it all comes together, it's just extremely disappointing for me. Extremely disappointing for me. Like I said, I'll probably go back and watch it. Now that I have no expectations. We'll see how I feel about it if I watch it in a year or a few months later or whatever. But I just really think, like, looking at M Night Shyamalan's career, does he suffer from he writes and directs his own screenplays? And it's worked for him. I think it's worked for him more than not, right? So, but it's just like in one of these things where he adapted this novel. It was an original concept to then go on and direct it. And I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm just left so unfulfilled by this movie, and it could have been so much better. So what I'm gonna do, based off this of this new film, what I want to do Um, what I want to do is I want to rate M Night Shyamalan's movies for me. This is not even an objective rating. This is just my ratings on M Night Shyamalan's film. So before I get into that though, let me rank Old. So what do I rate Old from on a scale from 1 to 10? Honestly, this is a 5. It's right down the middle for me. Like if you're a horror fan and you can enjoy, like I said, sequences or like weird scenarios to be placed in, I think you'll enjoy this. If you're like someone who needs for the plot to make sense, to like for the pacing, you may not enjoy this. For me, it's probably a 5. So that's what I'll rank it. But let's get into ranking these films. I'm gonna go from worst to best in my opinion. Number 10, The Happening. Like I said, I think it's a great concept if you just look at like the log line for a film, especially nowadays. You know, the film's what got to be like 14, 15 years old at this point. Um, it's a like a great scenario, a great concept. Execution terrible, acting terrible. I'm a Mark Wahlberg fan, and there's not really much I can defend in his portrayal there. Number 9 for me, probably gonna be Lady in the Water. Lady in the Water. And that is, again, that film to me just feels like it's so much going on. I really feel like Lady in the Water, again, is another great concept, but I feel like had that been a show, right, where you can really flesh out the time in that, I think it would have been better. I think there's a lot of great lore in there, possibly. The character, the monster design in that was beautiful to me. But ultimately, I really can't stand the fucking movie Lady in the Water. Number 8, The Village. I have to put I probably should have wrote this down beforehand. Number 8, yeah, I'll probably put The Village at number 8. And that's, again, honestly, it's one of my favorite M Night Shyamalan movies, but I think like again, it's like one of those things where did he like plagiarize a book? I know there was a question there, but it's just I just have never really gone back. I don't think I've maybe outside of 2 times in my life ever watched that movie. One of those times it was just on TV, and I think I was just like cleaning or whatever, and it was on in the background. So number 7, that's where I will place Old. Is number 7. I think this is a really beautiful movie, but you heard my review there, so I'm not going to get into it too much. Number 6, I'll put Glass at number 6. I think Glass was I say phenomenal, a really good movie, and I just think that for me, the ending was so terrible to see what they did to David Dunn's character that it really just made everything that I just watched almost be like, damn, it sucks. But I think they did a lot of interesting things psychologically in that movie, and getting into the psyche of David Dunn and like characters in general. I really think it was a good movie there. Again, I think it was one of those movies, had it not needed a twist, had M Night Shyamalan just committed to doing a comic book style movie where it was going to be the good guy versus the bad guy battling it out with like Mr. Glass playing playing them like puppets throughout it. I think it could have been so much of a better movie, but I really do like a lot of the things they did in Glass. So that would make number 5 The Visit to me. Yeah, I really like The Visit. The Visit is probably, especially at that time, one of the better horror movies that I've seen. Which is then number 4, Split. I fucking love Split. Split is one of those movies that you can never take me back to living in that moment again. But it was honestly one of those movies that I was so engaged in from start to finish, and then to find out that it was set in the world of Unbreakable just blew my fucking mind. Yeah. Next, Signs for me. Signs, amazing. Just I just love the hope that, again, the opposite of Old, the pacing, how everything really, like, if you listen to so much in that movie and then go back and watch it the second time, it was all laid out for you there. We just didn't know it was laid out. Every single thing that ended up playing in the climax of that film was all laid out. And it was just, I love movies that make you think. I love movies that make you guess. I love movies that kind of leave you with threads of like, look at that. And that's what that was. Next up for me, Unbreakable. Unbreakable is just, to find out that it was a superhero movie basically, and everything that came out at the end there, amazing. I think Unbreakable, like the story of father and son, and the guy who regretted losing his, almost on the precipice of losing his marriage, and like he had denied, like didn't realize, like he didn't want to think he was extraordinary, but he was. And I just think that it's Unbreakable is just such a great film, which only leaves one, and M Night Shyamalan's best movie, The Sixth Sense. And I hate to be cliche there, but The Sixth Sense is just, come on now, come on. We all know just that if social media would have been a thing, if memes would have been a thing back then, the I see dead people thing, that would have been everywhere. And I mean, it already was then, even then without social media being what it is today. The Sixth Sense is M Night Shyamalan's best film for me. It's a movie, if you want people to know how great M Night can be, I think it would either be, you either show them The Sixth Sense or you show them Glass. Even, I'm sorry, not Glass, you show them Split, even though Split kind of, the tag with David Dunn wouldn't make sense unless they seen Unbreakable, but I just think even Split is paced so great. But I think though, like The Sixth Sense would be a movie that if you want to show what M Night is capable of as a writer and director, those are the things those are the movies that you want to show them. So that's my list on M Night Shyamalan movies. That's it for this podcast. You can follow me at CEO Haize, at CEO Haize. Make sure you follow my brother JayB at the P1 JayB. You can also join our Facebook group, The Film Frequency, on Facebook. Just type that in. It'll be the first thing, the discussion group where we talk about movies and TV all over the place. I'll be dropping more content here more consistently. You know, now that I know JB's he's gonna be back when he's back. I was kind of holding off. I didn't want to release too many episodes without him, but I'll be bringing guests in. We'll be fleshing stuff out. We'll do what we can do. Until then, I may bring Andrew Bello in to do a review on Black Widow. And we'll just see. We'll see with Loki too. We'll see what we can do with all that. But that's it. This has been an episode, and you know, I will see you lovely and beautiful people next week when I release, probably in less than a week, because like I said, right after I see Snake Eyes, I'll probably release at least a short something. So be on the lookout for that. But I love each and every one of you guys. Peace.